You know that feeling? That nagging thought that our cities seem to be flooding way more than they used to. Well, you're not imagining it. And here's the thing, it's not just about bad luck with the weather. It goes much, much deeper. It's about a fundamental flaw in how we've built our entire world. So let's get into it. So let's start with a big question. Just think about this for a second. What if those quote unquote 1 in 100 year storms, the ones that are supposed to be a once in a lifetime event, what if they weren't so rare anymore? What if they started hitting us every few years? Or even every single year? Well, here's the scary part. That's not a what if scenario anymore. For millions of people right now, that is their reality. That future has already arrived. And our cities, all that concrete and steel, they are just not ready for what's coming. Okay, so to really get why this is happening, we gotta look up. We have to understand that the problem isn't simply more rain. No, it's that the rain itself, its very nature, is changing. We're dealing with a whole new kind of storm. And this is the key thing to wrap your head around. It's not about getting wetter overall, like having more drizzly days. Not at all. It's about getting more violent bursts of rain. We're seeing this massive shift with these really short, really intense, concentrated downpours. The total amount of water might be the same over a year, but now it's coming down all at once. And this graph right here, it nails it. See that curve on the left? That's the old way of thinking. Lots of frequent light rain. But that curve moving over to the right, that's our new reality. That's where we are now. We're getting fewer of those gentle showers and a whole lot more of the kind of downpours that cause serious flooding. The science behind this is actually pretty straightforward. Think of a warmer atmosphere like a bigger sponge. It can literally hold more water. And the numbers are clear. For every single degree Celsius the planet warms, the air can hold about 7% more moisture. So when a storm finally decides to break, there's just so much more fuel in the tank ready to be dumped on us. And look, this isn't some far-off prediction for our grandkids. This is happening right now. Let's just take Sydney as an example. Over the last 2 decades alone, the intensity of their short, hourly rainfall, those really heavy bursts, has jumped by a staggering 40%. That's not a model. That's a measured fact. The storms are getting supercharged. So you hear these terms thrown around, right? Like 1 in 100 year flood. What engineers are really talking about is something called annual exceedance probability, or AEP. It just means there's a 1% chance of a flood that big happening in any given year. But here's the huge, huge problem. All those calculations, all the designs for our drains and dams, they're all based on old weather data from a time when the climate was more stable. And that rulebook, it's completely, dangerously out of date. I love this analogy because it makes it so clear. Our city's drainage systems, all those pipes under the streets, they were designed for a garden hose, the kind of steady, predictable rain we used to get. But climate change has swapped out that garden hose for a fire hose, and we're trying to force all that water through the same tiny funnel. It's no wonder the system is starting to break. So what happens next? What happens when that fire hose of water slams into our cities with their old pipes and endless concrete? Well, it triggers this domino effect, a total cascade of failure that starts in the clouds and ends up right at your front door. And it pretty much always follows the same devastating script. Step 1, the sheer volume of rain just overwhelms the drains. They fill up. Step 2, with nowhere else to go, the water bursts onto the surface. Roads literally become rivers. That's what engineers call overland flow. And then comes the really nasty part. All that water starts forcing its way into a system it was never meant to be in, our sewer system. The end game? Contaminated floodwater just spreading everywhere. Okay, but how does clean rainwater get into the dirty sewer pipes? Well, it happens in 2 main ways. There's inflow, which is the obvious one, water pouring in through a broken manhole cover or maybe even an illegal pipe connection. But then there's infiltration, which is way sneakier. This is when water seeps in through thousands of tiny cracks and busted joints in pipes that are, let's be honest, ancient. We're talking 70, 80 years old in some places. And when that happens, you get something called a sanitary sewer overflow, or SSO. And trust me, it's as bad as it sounds. This is not just rainwater flooding the streets anymore. We are talking about a hazardous mix of raw sewage and stormwater bubbling up from the ground, flooding our streets, our parks, our homes. A simple flooding event just turned into a massive public health emergency. But that public health crisis, that's just one piece of the puzzle. The cost of all this cascade of failure, is absolutely staggering. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about the toll it takes on real people, on their lives, and on their basic sense of safety. The numbers are just mind-blowing. Let's just look at one single event, the 2022 East Coast floods in Australia. The estimated price tag for that, $9.6 billion. And a number that big doesn't just sit on a spreadsheet in some government office. Oh no, it trickles right down to you and me. Right now, an estimated 1.6 million Australian households are dealing with something called insurance affordability stress. That's a fancy way of saying their insurance premiums are skyrocketing, or worse, they can't even get flood insurance at any price. And it's hitting people's biggest investment, their home. Get this, on average, if your house is inside one of those 1 in a 100-year flood zones, it's already worth almost 11% less than a nearly identical house just outside the zone. The value of your home is literally being eroded by this risk. But honestly, forget the money for a second. Think about the human cost. This quote just says it all. A resident who lived in their home for decades with no issues. And then, in 2022 alone, their house flooded 4 separate times. Can you even imagine that? The trauma, the fear, it just completely shatters your sense of safety in your own home. And that shattered sense of safety, that's the real crisis here. So what do? We can't just keep building bigger and bigger pipes. That's a losing game. What we need is a complete revolution in how we think about our cities and water. We have to stop building concrete funnels and start designing resilient sponges. And this really is a total 180 in thinking. For the last 100 years, the goal was simple. Get water off the streets and out of sight as fast as humanly possible. The new goal? It's the complete opposite. It's about slowing the water down, letting it soak in, storing it, and, actually treating it like the precious resource it is. This whole new approach actually has a name. It's called water-sensitive urban design, or WSUD for short. And the central idea is beautiful in its simplicity. Let's finally start designing our cities to work with nature's water cycle instead of constantly fighting against it. And the cool thing is, the solutions can start really small, like right in your own backyard. Things like a rainwater tank that not only cuts down on runoff, but also lowers your water bill. Or what about tearing up that concrete driveway and putting in permeable pavers that let the rain soak right through? Or a rain garden, which looks amazing and acts like a mini wetland for your property. These are real, practical things that we can all actually do. But doing this house by house isn't going to cut it alone. We need the big picture to change too. That means updating our building codes to make these kinds of solutions the defaults, not some expensive add-on. We need developers to start advertising a home's resilience as a luxury feature. It really demands a whole new way of thinking, where every single house, every driveway, every yard is seen as a vital piece of the city's infrastructure. So that really leaves us all with one final, pretty pointed question to think about. As the storms get stronger and the flooding gets worse, we all have to look at our own little corner of the world and ask, is my property, my home, my driveway, is it part of the problem, or am I going to make it part of the solution?